This episode has been brought to you by the Raw Spirit Team. Building a business can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. We teach small and medium-sized businesses strategies for building a profitable, successful, stress-free business and life. Because guess what? You are more than your business. Through one-on-one training, online courses, and monthly guest experts, the Spirit Team is built on the principle of building each other up in business and in spirit. Try it for 14 days for free. Just head to rawconsulting.com and check out the Raw Spirit Team. Hey, it's Lauren from the Raw podcast. On the show today, I spoke with Juliet Wheater, and she is a PR, that's public relations expert. On our chat today, we covered off so many things. I really got on super well with Juliet. She was really interesting, and I loved discovering more about the world of PR that I actually never really realized before. I also did a very difficult thing in this interview. Yes, I asked her a question. Apparently, she's never been asked in 20 years. So what was the question? Well, you're going to have to listen to find out more. We also discussed, what a PR person can do for your business, tips and tricks on working with an influencer, and the importance of ensuring that everyone working in your business is on the same page in relation to, how your business should be represented, especially dealing with criticism. So let's get into it. Here we go. Hey, I'm Lauren, and welcome to the Raw podcast. My guest today is Juliet Wheater. She has 20 years worth of experience in PR. She has built relationships with key beauty, health, and wellness brands and press over these 2 decades. An industry insider with access to the top influencers, journalists, specialists, and trends. From rural countryside retreats to cutting-edge spas, Juliet will put your brand in the wellness frame and get it noticed when and where it matters. She has over 20 years experience in the luxury, lifestyle, spa, and travel sectors, and she's devised creative, high-quality media campaigns for some of the best loved brands internationally. She possesses a skilled understanding of press relations and brand building with experience on both sides of the fence. In-house at Parfums Givenchy, part of the LVMH group, working with Michael Kors, Marc Jacobs, and Aqua Parma, and within travel PR agencies, where she counted Skibo Castle, the Capitol Hotel, Hotel Martinez, Harrods, and the 3 historic house hotels as clients. So Juliet has grown every business she's worked with. She is a communications and digital strategist specializing in an integrated approach. And somehow she has decided to spend some time with me to tell me and you at home all about it. Juliet, wow, what a bio, girl. Well done.
Thanks. I've been busy.
That's so awesome. That must just fill you with so much joy when you look at, your decades of work. And I love that as we get older, we can say things like that, and it's true.
Yeah. And I've loved every minute of it. That's the best bit.
That's so cool. And I can see that's true for you because you have a beautiful smile when you mention it. And, I know that the world of PR must be ever changing. We're going to get into the nitty gritty about it. I do want to know how technology has changed the way that you do things. I do want to talk a little bit about, do you have to be calm under pressure to be a PR person? Are you always on call? But before we get into that, maybe you can tell me a bit about how your journey started and how you realized that, public relations was something that you were interested in and good at.
I come from a bit of a theatrical background. I was always putting on plays for family and friends. And I think you have to have a sort of, I like to think of PR as that, theatrical. You put on a stage, you put on a different play, whoever your audience might be. But going back, my first interest in public relations really came from my mum. She was a busy working mum of 3 and cared for everyone, her team at work, us children, dad and the dog. And so to relax, she would sit with her coffee and paint her nails and browse her favourite glossy magazines. And that to me, I could just watch her, and then she would watch her imagination wander. She would escape from all the pressures that she was under. She would sort of regain her equilibrium. It was a sort of feminine practice, a feminine ritual of painting nails, reading magazines.
Yeah.
First memories, and that became ingrained on me, so much so that I went to university and studied women's magazines and their role in society. Oh. So, for example, Good Housekeeping magazine over here in the UK was allowed to print over the World War because it taught women to sort of boil broths and make clothes out of parachutes and things like that.
Oh,
so it
wow.
was classed as a very practical read. So things like that, I just endeared me to women's magazines even more. And after university, I got some internships and worked very hard in the fashion cupboards and in the beauty cupboards of the magazines, just watching them piece all the magazines together, all the pages together each month. And I was absolutely in my element there. But a good friend on the beauty desk of Good Housekeeping magazine said to me that Parfums Givenchy were looking for a PR executive, a PR peanut. And it suddenly struck me, as I didn't know much about a PR's role, but it suddenly struck me that I would need to know a lot more about one type of media, one type of magazine. I would need to read them all, research them all, and know what stories would interest. So effectively, I would be paid to be reading these magazines. So I thought, well, that's a no-brainer, I'll do that. And it just was a role that suited me, and I've loved it every day for 20 years.
That's so cool. I love that. And I love how, you see your mom emulating this experience of nurturing herself, and you use that as a catapult for what you now do as a career, which, that's so cool. I love that story.
A woman's magazine is her time to just to relax, just to transport herself. It's still, in this day and age of rush, that to me is still so important.
Yeah, I agree. And we don't do it enough, do we? We don't always take the time to sit and read and just be where we are. You're right. We're always on the go and thinking of the next thing. Do you have to be a good writer to be in PR? Because when I think about public relations, I often think about, when PR people are brought in to turn something around. I remember a friend of mine, his wife is a PR person for a politician, and that politician was up to some interesting things. And so she was having to, position that in a way, with the media. So I guess my question is, do you have to be a good writer? And at the same time, I can't help but think about what you said earlier about your, theatrical, your love of theater, and how the two of them kind of work together almost in story.
Exactly that. I think you do have to be a good writer. You've got to be nosy as well, because the journalists are nosy. They want to know, and you'll be caught out. If you don't know your subject inside and out, you'll be caught out. So a PR is an extension of a person's business, because they are going to be asked questions by the journalist and they have to know. You do have to write for your audience as well as your client. You've got to strike the balance, something that the journalist will enjoy reading, and not copy and paste, but almost. I mean, that's what you want, really.
Yeah.
But the client's got to be satisfied that it's their own voice as well. And I did get tested the other day, because I've been writing about spas, wellness, treatments for years and years. And then I was thrown a curveball and had to write about plastics. So I realise now that it is writing well, but it's also being able to take a vast amount of information and collecting the most important points of it. What is the story? What is the interest? What is the hook? What does the journalist want to know?
Do you connect with, the companies that you represent? Do you feel that you need to have a moral connection with what they're doing? Because in a way, you're also positioning.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You're selling their product, basically.
I couldn't sell or implement a story to a journalist if I didn't believe it. They'd see through me in a moment. If I didn't love it, I couldn't get any coverage, because no, everybody's wanting to be authentic these days, and quite rightly so. You have to speak for the client. And don't forget, you're working with this journalist time and time again. So you might be working with this journalist on one particular client, but who's to say that next week you'll be working with her or him on a different client? So it's always got to be what you believe in.
Yeah, because they'll be able to see if there's a discrepancy with, the way that you're acting with something versus another thing.
Exactly.
I guess when I think about, PR, I do think about it in terms of building relationships. So you kind of talked about it, how when you're working with a journalist, you could be working with them multiple times. So, is a big part of your job building and maintaining relationships with those that you work with and those that, you're employed by, etc.
That's absolutely it. Absolutely it. It is all about relationships. They call it a little black book, don't they? So you're only as important as your little black book. And I've got different strengths. So I'm a PR in the wellness sector. You mentioned your friend in politics, and you've got your sectors, and in that is your pool of journalists. And it's lovely to watch their careers grow, because as yours grows, so does theirs. So they could be starting off on a little local rag or what have you, and then they can climb the dizzy heights and be on some massive portal or a beautiful glossy magazine. It's all about relationships, definitely cultivating, maintaining, and always looking for more. There's so many spaces to write, on influencers, bloggers, there's print media, there's radio, there's TV, there's so many different journalists that I suppose that's what I like doing. I like meeting other people and learning from them and hearing their different perspectives on things. Yeah.
Do you position, let's say you're dealing with a spa, do you position them differently, or do you think about a story in a different way based on the audience that you're talking to or the platform that you're using?
Yes. You have to find out what your client wants to achieve. Do they want, so for example, with spas, I was called in recently because one particular spa was selling their spa breaks very well. They were stocked. They couldn't keep up with the spa breaks, but it was the spa days that were letting them down. A Wednesday afternoon, they couldn't shift. So that's when a PR person would be called in, because where's the story? Do they have a lovely treatment? Do they have lovely lunches? What's the package for that particular spa day that isn't performing? Could they see a PT after lunch, or what could be the package? Could they meet the chef? Could they go on a mindfulness walk? Could they swim in a freshwater pool? Or what could be the spa day? What could sell it? Are you wanting to go to corporates? Are you wanting to go to ladies at lunch? Get to the crux of what your client wants, and then where they want to position it, and who would be interested in purchasing that spa day.
It sounds like you are sort of, because I guess I always thought about PR in relation to, celebrities and that kind of world, right? Because I think that's where it's sort of more maybe well known.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me as though you're almost a blend between a copywriter and a salesperson. You're sort of in the middle, but all the while you're really cognizant of how you're positioning. Not to say a copywriter isn't, they are as well, but it almost seems that you're looking at the overall position of the brand as well in the marketplace, as opposed to just selling the spa day. Is that sort of true?
Yeah, that's very perceptive of you. That I've never heard that before, but that's bang on. That's exactly what you are. You're a copywriter and a salesperson. Your role is to protect the brand as well as promote the brand. So yeah, you have to craft the right message to resonate with their target audience. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And like you said before, well, you didn't exactly say it in this way, but, it seems as though you're also the trusted right hand, left hand woman, because you need to know everything about what's going on so that you're prepared, for that question that the journalist is holding, they're holding their cards very close. And then at the end, they play that last card, but you already knew it was coming. It's very dramatic. I'm imagining you in a dark, smoky room and you're like, dealing about wellness, which doesn't work at all. But yeah.
No, it's so true. You are part of the team. You are part of the team of the client. You know that their goals, you know their aspirations. You can tweak. You've also, you can't be a yes person as well. You've got to be able to say what will work and what won't. So, some of their offering, they want to see in Tatler and Vogue and Harper's, and you have to say, look, that's not actually your target market. What is going to work for you is, say, the millennial reading Grazia or OK, or you have to know your platforms and what's going to work. You have to be able to say to the client, look, in my experience, this is the pickup. This is the message. This is what will resonate with your audience.
Right. So how do you manage the expectations of the client? I mean, it sounds to me that you're pretty, forthright, that you're able to say clearly, no, the expectations for that won't be met. This is why, this is what we can do. But I mean, how do you manage those client expectations?
I just have to say, in my experience, this has worked and this hasn't. Having said that, if they do have a wish list of a target media, so some of them do, they have a wish list, and I'd love to appear on that podcast, or I'd love to speak at this event, or this is my favorite magazine, I'd love to, you can accommodate their wants and dreams to a certain degree, but really you have to just think, look, what is your avatar? This is what they're reading, this is what they're doing, this is where they're going, this is, and I think, well, I used to be, yes, when I was younger, I used to be yes, and just do whatever they wanted, whereas you don't get the respect, you don't get the, if all your activity just doesn't pick up, if there's no return on investment in the end, then you're out of a job. So it's really up to you to be able to say, this is what's going to work for you. I've seen it time and time before. And they trust you. They do trust you. They want your expertise. Like with anything, if you've got a supplier and your supplier's telling you something, it's your responsibility to listen to it also. Deliver it in a nice way.
Yeah, of course. There's always ways of saying no in a nice way. And I know that one of my previous guests, she was talking about how your customer will respect you a lot more if you actually do say no, because they know that, you have their best interests at heart, that you're not just yes.
Oh, totally. Yes. And I have come mainly from a service background. So my hotels and spas, they're giving an overnight stay, they're giving a meal for two with wine. The journalist is going to have a beautiful treatment. She's using the facilities. They might have to pay for her flight if she's on a. So, I mean, this is all time and money. So if it's not going to pay dividends, then we won't bother, I wouldn't waste their time, the journalist's time. It's got to be, I'm pretty results driven, put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's good. And actually you need to be results driven. And I think that, very often business people, sorry, I shouldn't say very often business people, that's probably not true, but there are business people out there who aren't thinking about the results of what they're doing, who aren't paying attention to the actions that they're taking and seeing whether or not, that's resulting in traffic or revenue or, whatever the case may be, whatever outcome they're looking for. Right. So yeah, it's important that
this is it.
Are clear on that.
Oh, completely. And also what I find is that people or businesses, brands, they think, oh, I've heard the word PR, and they come too early to it. They've got a bit of a concept rather than a brand, core values and identity, they don't really know what they are or who their audience is. You've got to be pretty crystal clear before you start shouting from the rooftops. So that's another thing I would say, is make sure that you're really ready for PR as well. What do you want to achieve? Who do you want to talk to? What's your brand message? And then the PR runs with it,
Does a PR person also help you to gain press? Is that a big part of what you do as well? Because of all your connections, you kind of go to Juliet, and Juliet knows 1,000 people, and she's built trust and a great reputation, right?
It's the primary aspect that a client would want from me, press coverage. Yeah. A lot of them want to see these beautiful, well, they're online now, but they're big binders of heaving with lovely editorial reviews. And that's what they want, because they want their audience member. I forget the touch points, how many times a customer's got to see something before they purchase.
I think it's like 7
it used
to
to be
13.
7.
You hear different numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do, you're right, 7 to 13. So for me, the client has got to be in a dentist chair and reading a magazine and they see the client, or they can be on a flight and they're reading the magazine, or they're in the car and they hear it again on the radio. You've got to be where they are. You've got to be online. Perhaps you'll be a competition. Competitions are usually good for PRs as well, because with a piece of editorial comes an element of risk. You do lay your hands with the journalist. They're reviewing a product. They will say exactly how their skin reacted to it. They're no holds barred. Whereas a competition, you can have your logo, you can have your print, you can have your text approved by the client, sometimes even data capture. That's what they all want these days. So you can have a bit of data capture with the GDPR compliant. But people don't realize the risk. It does come with an element of risk. You've got to be sure, because you're willingly going into the hands of the journalist.
Yeah, it's so funny because, I've worked with different clients, and I've worked with people who've worked with different clients. And sometimes, you can bring people to their location, but if their location isn't actually ready, I'll use an example of a restaurant that I had a friend who repped for them. And I remember saying to her, the lighting isn't right in the restaurant. It's fluorescent. It's not, when you look at all the restaurants around the restaurant, they're all dimly lit, romantic.
Nice ambiance.
Exactly. Then you go to this one, and I heard the food is great, but I will never go in there because the light is not good. It's a big empty room. And she basically said, they won't listen to me. And so the issue is obviously that, at least from a consumer point of view, I wouldn't go there, which would mean that all their advertising would be in vain if they're trying to target somebody who has the same, thoughts as me. So do you get to test out everything, Juliet, before?
Oh, I've had a lovely time. I've had a lovely time over the years. Yes. One of my favorites was opening the Ring Hotel in Vienna. It's 5-star. So we brought our journalists from the UK over, and we were treated to hot toddies. Do you know what hot toddy is?
Is that like a hot
warm whiskey?
Lovely.
So we were there and we watched stuntmen. This was at night. We watched the stuntmen come down with a spotlight down at the exterior of the hotel. And they gave the key to the sheikh who owned the building. He opened it and we partied throughout the whole hotel. It was one crazy night. It was absolutely fantastic. I've also eaten more Michelin star dinners than I can shake a stick at. I've whizzed around Portugal for the golf World Cup with all the golf journalists. Oh, I've had a lovely time.
I love jobs where there are additional perks.
Oh, I've flown here, there and everywhere. Cape Town to do a spa out there. Yeah, lovely treatments. It's been yoga on the beach. Yeah, it's been lovely.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
wonderful. So have you ever taken part in, let's say a treatment and it just wasn't up to standard? And have you been able to have that difficult conversation knowing that, essentially you're prepping yourself for, when a journalist comes and the last thing you would want to do is go, yeah, this was subpar and still let somebody review it?
I have to ask all the right questions because
Yeah.
I'm still a bit of a layman with the treatments because I'm generally writing rather than lying on the bed, sadly. But I just would ask them questions. Did you mean to do that? What's the benefit of that? Just try and unpick my experience as to what the journalist might experience. So that would be what I would do there. But I have had some hairy moments where one in particular I couldn't really salvage because I'd sent the journalist to a hotel and they were woefully unprepared. I think the porter didn't bother with the girls' bags. I think the breakfast had to be sent back because it was pretty dire. Just a catalogue of things that went wrong. And of course, I'm not there. I send the journalist on this trip.
Yeah.
And she did actually call me the following day and said, "Oh, Juliet, it was just dreadful. I just, the service was so poor, this, that, and the other." But actually, in that respect, that's where a PR comes into their own, because I said, "Well, thank you very much for your feedback." And because we had such a lovely rapport, she said, "I'm not going to write anything negative. I'm not going to write anything at all." So we left it at that.
Wow, that's that would be very, I'm sure that wouldn't always happen. So that's going back to the whole building relationships, the
Exactly.
fact that, because she wouldn't have been doing herself a service if she wrote anything that wasn't authentic. So writing nothing is even a better experience. And then hopefully you're able to take that feedback, give it to the client.
Exactly right. They always, everybody gets their feedback following a journalist. Yeah.
Going back to your example of the day spa. So you were talking about, the wellness client that might want to promote their day spa, let's say, as their other packages. So I guess one thing that I remember listening to lately was about how when you're trying to promote something, let's pretend you have a new book coming out, that it's almost as though you need to look at the story in a different way. Not, "Hey, everyone, I have a new book coming out." It's, "You'll never guess where this book was written," or "You'll never guess where this book, where the inspiration came from this book," or "It's been 25 years in the making," or something like that. So is part of your job also part detective to kind of identify, the heart of the story, but also make it something that seems unique and, almost clickbaity?
Well, exactly. You're so good, Lauren. Yes, exactly that. It's you're doing the work before the journalist gets there. You have to preempt what the journalist is going to say. So I do ask a lot of questions. I was at a hotel recently, and the whole board were there, the owners were there, and I kept asking all these questions and scribbling my notes as I do. And it transpired that the general manager, his father had been the general manager at that hotel, and his grandfather had been the general manager of that hotel. And I don't think many people knew that.
Right.
And that's something that a journalist would have found out. If I hadn't have been there first, the journalist would have found that out. And that's a lovely story. But I don't think the members of that board knew that. But yes, I mean, if you take an example of a book, I have been doing a book actually, a nice A Verdict launch, and the lady had a lovely personal story there. She wrote it for her mother. That was one nice message for that book, but another was the way she wrote about the doshas. So she put it beautifully by saying a pitta. Now I'm going to get this all wrong because I forget, but she said a pitta is a perfectionist. She's always on the go. She doesn't miss a thing. And then I forget, but something like the other dosha is off on a retreat and relaxing and can't understand why the pitta is cross with her and she's there, you know. And it was just so beautiful. I mean, I'm not doing it justice, but it was just so beautifully written that if you didn't know your doshas, you could pick it out
Right.
in that couple of pages. You could identify yourself
Yeah.
in a humorous way, you know.
That's
So
cool.
that's the sort of extract that would go to the journalist, because it was so funny,
Right. But
and
also
simplistic.
accessible, right? You're making it
Yes,
accessible to the average reader.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Do you pay attention to the language that you use? Because you would change your language, wouldn't you, based on your demographic, based on the publication? I mean, some publications are going to be a lot, way fancier than other ones. Some people just want to
Oh,
know.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I work with so many different age groups. You know, there are sort of elderly gents on the Telegraph that are writing well into their 70s. And then, of course, I'm working with an influencer who's all of about 23. So, yes, you do adjust your language and your ways of operating. So, for example, I used to fax my press releases. That's how old I am. Um, and you email, or you DM somebody over on Instagram. It's however they want to be contacted, as well as the language that you're using.
Let's talk about technology. So I love that you talked about faxing, because I also am familiar with faxing. Not that I did much work when the fax era was there. I was definitely a student.
Yeah.
But I'm dying to know, how technology has changed, your role, the role of PR as you see it, because we're dealing with a world now where maybe what you felt, and just tell me if I'm, speaking out
Mm.
of school, but what you felt you could control, a narrative you could control, is now out of your control. And with social media, essentially, everyone is a media rep, everyone has an opinion, and we're living in the age of reviews, which are a huge,
Mm.
currency. So how have you been able to navigate the challenges of technology, and how do you find that, technology has changed, the work that you do?
Mm-hmm. It was all about print media. So it was all about big broadsheets. It was all about women's magazines, and there is still a love for that in the UK. We do love our newspapers. We do love our magazines,
Mm-hmm.
but our best. Exactly. So, for example, our best read website at the moment is a newspaper. So the Daily Mail online is our best read website. So it's funny, it's helped, actually. It's helped because whereas I could get one piece, I could get one shot at it in the old days, in the Telegraph, in the magazines, whereas now you can have a lengthier piece online. So you can go into print, you have a product placement or a review in print, but then they'll transfer it to online as well. And if it's beautiful and positive, then you're there for years and years and years. They all want backlinks to their websites, so that raises their own SEO from the piece of editorial that they've got. And it gives me data. It gives me data capture as well, all this online work. So
Yeah.
It's always been a fast-paced and exciting. It's even more so. It's created more avenues, as I've said, vloggers and bloggers I now work with, which I never used to back in the day. But like you say, everybody does review everything.
Yeah. Everybody has an opinion.
Everybody has an opinion.
Especially an anonymous person behind a keyboard. They have a big opinion.
A little keyboard warrior.
Yeah.
But I just think really that it's more opportunity for discussion. If you're warts and all, which I think everybody needs to be now, the hot word is authentic. and authenticity. And I just think, be loud, be proud, be kind, be an authentic brand, be eco, and be loud and proud. And you'll have your critics. But if it's on your own platforms, it's all on your own social media, then that can be controlled. But otherwise, if there are a lot of reviews, so with my hotels, a lot of reviewers would complain about anything. There's no sense. A reader, reading TripAdvisor, for example, could really get the gist of the reviewer. Are they just incensed over nothing?
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. I just don't worry. I did say that PR comes with an element of risk, and it does. But if you make a mistake, apologise and move on at the end of the day. But technology's brought more opportunity, is what I would say.
And it's interesting, when you make a mistake, in a way, if you honor it, and it's how you deal with it, you say you apologize, or you say you'll do better, whatever the case may be, right? I mean, we've seen, especially lately, there's a lot of media happening. At the time of recording this, the Black Lives Matter movement is very big. So there's a lot of people there's a lot of fallout. There's a lot of conversation around that. And I think that, as humans, we learn and grow. And I think sometimes when you're looking behind the brand of something, there are humans there. So, as people learn, and hopefully they do better. And, just going back to what you're talking about before, there's always haters on the way to the top, isn't there? There's always going to be somebody that has an opinion. One of my favorite reviews, I remember we were reading about a location, and somebody wrote a review. I think it was 1 out of 5 stars, because it was too windy. And the manager wrote back and said, well,
there you go.
We're very sorry you had that experience, but as you may know, we're unable to control the wind. And it was it was so wonderful. And one of the things that I feel people need to do are sometimes respond to the comments that warrant a response. I'm not saying that one necessarily did, but I thought it was an opportunity for the brand to really stand out and look professional. Would you agree with that? Because sometimes I see people react very negatively online, really take it personally, and it actually turns me off more than the original comment that set that off. Any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, don't come back aggressively. Never come back aggressively, because this is their standpoint, this is their opinion. And if it's one person writing that, then others will think like that. So again, it's an opportunity to listen to the conversation of what's happening. What are they saying about your brand? Is there any element of truth in it? Because if there is, you've got to weed that out. You've got to stand up, as I say, apologize and say, this is our plan moving forward. We're going to correct it like this, and moving forward, this is how we'll be. So never, no, not defensively ever. No, just take it on the chin.
Yeah, exactly. Don't take it personally. And would you recommend that people just take a deep breath, or even take a day before they respond if they need to?
Yes, absolutely. It's just one statement, one final statement that answers all questions, sews it up, done.
Yeah. One thing that I heard about is that, I don't know where I read this, but I read this at some point, because it definitely didn't come from me, but it was about making sure that everyone in your organization is on the same page in relation to responses and how to deal with situations as they arise. Would you recommend that, there's maybe a set of responses that a company has, or a set of, you're nodding your head at that. So is it important to have basically a plan in place so that everyone's on the same?
Yeah, that's your crisis plan. So your crisis plan is to think where this negative information or reviews could be coming from. So are they coming from your social channels? Where are they coming from, and who can see those in the first instance? And then who does it escalate? What would you do then? So if you've got a negative review on social media, what's your plan? And as I say, for me, I would look at it. I mean, is it a catalyst? Is it spiraling out of control fast? Because if it is, act fast. If it's not, I mean, if it's just one lone review, perhaps don't light the fire. Perhaps just ignore it.
Yeah.
But if it's spiraling out of control, then you've got to just face it head on and really think quick. But a crisis plan is your hierarchy. So who sees the problem? Who reports it to the next person up the chain? Have your system in place always.
Yeah, because it would really suck, for lack of a better word, if the wrong person responded, if they didn't go through the chain of hierarchy. Channels, thank you. Escalated. Yes, this needs to be escalated up. And if they responded in a way, I mean, I'm sure we all could remember scenarios where companies didn't deal with something in the right way. They might have even had an intern that dealt with it, or that did something that really jeopardized the whole legacy of the company. So it's about being careful and being prepared, I guess, what I'm getting.
Exactly. Yeah, crisis plan. In a career of PR, that's what you could do. You can specialize in crisis PR. So as I said before, PR is protecting and promoting. So I promote, but in PR, you can also just essentially work on crisis PR.
So when you're promoting, I mean, have you ever essentially taken a business that was maybe in crisis mode and then it was protected and now you're promoting it? I mean, and essentially establishing a new, hey, it's the new and improved, or it's, we're starting again, or, however, how do you position that in the marketplace? Do you recommend rebrand? Do you recommend keeping the same thing but positioning it in a different way?
Yes, exactly. That's it. And rebranding is often quite a good way to sort of take the shackles off, remove the old and in with the new. So that is normally essentially what happens. Is it's a rebrand, and it's it's new people as well. I mean, generally you have to have a new team to turn it all around. There's got to be new ways of thinking, new ways of doing. So you make that known that there's a new team behind. As I say, I work in a lot with hotels, so you've got a new chef, you've got a new maitre d', you've got a new manager. A new team will do wonders, and that's essentially how you turn it around. And new packages. So, for example, a new package we launched fairly recently was all these champagne breakfasts. So that did very well. The lunch was full, the dinners were full, but breakfast, they didn't have anything sexy. So something as simple as a nice champagne breakfast, meet your friend or meet an acquaintance or business colleague for a breakfast. So that's what changed that particular property around, made it a bit more lax.
Yeah, it's so funny how sometimes, you need that objective point of view, or you need somebody else coming in and going, wait a minute, there's a huge opportunity in the market that you haven't thought about. And I'm sure sometimes, you would tell somebody that and they would go, oh my God, it's been sitting here the whole time, but I've just been so wrapped up in it that I haven't been able to step outside.
So often the case, you're working, what did they say? You're working in your business rather than on your business. So for me, you've got to walk through the customer journey. What's the customer journey like? When they click onto your website, what do they see? Is there a sales funnel that takes them through? What's your customer journey? And you're so often in your business, not on your business. So
I know one thing I like to recommend people do is go through the front door. If you have a brick and mortar store, go through the front door, see what people see. If your website, go through the front door, especially on mobile.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, there's a store that I live near and they're constantly changing their window display. And it's fabulous because every time I run by, oh, there's a new outfit. Oh, I love that
What's
necklace.
next?
Yeah, exactly. It keeps you inspired and it keeps you interested. Do you find that it's difficult sometimes to keep things fresh for your clients, especially when they've been in the business for so long that they almost need to be reconnected with their why and reconnected with their passion? And that's one of the things that you're able to assist them in doing?
It is, absolutely. And what I do for that is I send them their competitors. What's your competitor doing and why? So that's
Right.
competitor analysis comes in very handy for that. If they're getting a bit staid, look around, because if you're a dinosaur, you're not, if you don't change and evolve, you're a dinosaur and you're not going to survive.
Yeah.
Especially true in these funny times that we're living in. You've got to be changing, you've got to be evolving. So competitor analysis is a really good one. And again, look for the messages. Is there a new product that you can bring out, or could you bring out an exclusive? If you deal with products, could there be an exclusive or a service, one-time offer, valid until is there an anniversary? You could be approaching an anniversary, that sort of thing. Just look for the clues, look for the hints and hooks.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, in such a cluttered, landscape now, it's more difficult than ever to stand out and to be unique and to be different. So, like you said, when you're anchoring on some of these points that make you unique to you, such as your 50th anniversary or, whatever the case may be, that helps you to stand out in the marketplace and be different.
Yeah, absolutely. And link up with others as well. I often say, let's do a partnership with somebody, partner up with a charity that's close to your heart, or, drive a nice initiative with a charity, or, that we have some funny ones. I don't know whether you do, but we have some national awareness days. So, for example, we've got a CBD oil at the moment.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we were discussing today that it's National Eczema Week in September. So let's do something around that. That's a hook.
Yeah.
That's an angle that the health journalists may be writing. So let's get this CBD oil out in front of them. So there's always ways to promote and sell and tell your story.
Is it better to be different? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Do you think it's more important to try to be better or to be different?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say better. Better because you're different. Different is good because you're probably going after different audiences, but always strive to be better. Thought leadership has got to be better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I think sometimes, I guess part of me asking that question was because very often there's like a competitiveness with pricing that you want to try to have competitive pricing or a little bit cheaper or something like that. But really what it comes down to is, if you're positioning yourself better as a thought leader, but then also you're showcasing that you have these extra touches and elements. So it's really a combination of the two, I guess.
I suppose it is. In 20 years, I've never been asked that. You're really pulling them out now. But that's what I would say. I would say be better. You can be different because you can go after different audiences, but always want to be better. Be changing, be agile, new ways of working, bring in new benefits, bring in different aspects. Try and be at the fore all the time. Yeah.
And one of the things I'm getting from you as well is potentially the importance of planning ahead. It's July now, July 2020, because we never know when people listen to these podcasts.
No.
You're talking about an event coming up, or a time in September. So obviously you're planning ahead. I mean, how important is it to plan ahead? Because I think that sometimes people are so reactive that they end up not doing anything properly because they're rushing.
Yes. Well, it's funny you should say, because yes, July 2020, the press are looking at Christmas. So
Yes.
we're doing all our Christmas activity now. So they're looking at showcases. They're going to the fashion show. Well, they're not. They're looking at them online, but they're looking at the products. They're seeing they're looking for their gift ideas basically for Christmas, and then they'll write them next month. So July is all about research for Christmas. August is all about writing your Christmas issues. So you do have to have a plan. You've got your PR plan, as we call it, and you've got your long lead time. So you've got monthly magazines that work 3 to 4 months in advance. You've got your weekly press. You write about 6 to 8 weeks in advance. Of course, online, I mean, it's terrifying when you're speaking and they're typing as you speak. So online can be pretty instant. Working with an influencer, fairly instant. Yeah, they work a good week or two in advance. But you mentioned reactive. You've got to be reactive as well, because if a big story breaks, can you jump on the bandwagon in some capacity? So you need a bit of both. You need to be organised and plan ahead, but don't forget to see what others are writing, and can you jump on the bandwagon with online pieces nowadays. If they've written a good on a subject matter that you could have contributed to and you haven't, call them up and say, can I be added to this piece? So be reactive also. Yeah,
that's a great idea. I know we're just about at our hour here. Do you have a few more minutes for 2 more questions?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you were mentioning working with an influencer. I know you said you have one on your roster. I guess my question is whether or not you have any tips for people who are working with influencers or wanting to, because we know that there's a lot of conversation about getting influencers to help you promote your brands. And I guess some of my concerns in relation to that are sometimes that people aren't looking at the engagement rate that posts are getting, that they're looking at maybe the amount of maybe followers or likes that they have that actually could be inauthentic. Do you have any advice around that? And also around, making sure that, I guess, the influencer does their part, that you're still represented properly, because I have heard stories of people who went to get an influencer, gave them the product, and then, their part of the deal wasn't reciprocated. So any advice around that?
Yes, definitely. So choose wisely, do a lot of research, do the hashtags, find a list of or cultivate your own list of influencers, and build up a rapport. It doesn't happen overnight. So comment on some of their posts, build up this relationship, DM them, chat. This is what I was thinking, this is what I was hoping, this is what I would like to achieve. Would you be reciprocal to that? Or you want, because they will. They're not shy at coming forward. So do set out what you'd like. So if I send you X, can we agree that you would do one IG post and a blog review about it? Don't be afraid to do that. But exactly that, check out the domain authority, build up the rapport, check the engagement, as you say. Is she responding to her followers? How is she responding to her followers? Are the followers a nice bunch? Are they a nice community? Are they speaking to each other on her feed? Really check out who this person is and who her community are. And go from there. Don't count a micro influencer. We all want the macro influencer. But like you say, likes, and they don't mean much anymore.
Yeah.
Instagram stopped doing them for a period of time, didn't they, recently?
Yeah.
So check the engagement, and it goes back to the authentic, is she going to be a mouthpiece for your brand?
Yeah, exactly. And then, like you said, you're almost putting it in the hands of the journalist, where hopefully they'll like your product and,
Yeah, but ask for feedback as well. So if she's trying your brand, if it's clothing or skincare, how are you? How are you finding it? Can I assist you? Do you need any tips from me? Keep the dialogue going.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So just my last question, Juliet, and thank you so much. It's been such a great
No, thank you.
conversation. I really enjoyed myself and learned a
Oh, me too. Thank you.
lot. So, do you have any advice when choosing a PR person? I'm sure that people can contact you if they're in the wellness space, but if
Yeah.
they're not and they might be looking for some guidance, I think
Mhm.
that anyone listening to this conversation is recognizing that a PR person is a whole lot more than maybe they initially thought. I learned that.
Mhm.
So do you have advice
Okay.
about being a proper PR person, because there's a lot of trust that needs to be there?
There's a lot of trust because they are carrying your message
Yeah.
far and wide, so they've got to do it well, and they've got to get to know you and your brand. There's a lots of accreditations, so we've got CIPR over here in the UK, but you can be an accredited PR person, so that might be your first port of call.
Mm.
Reputation, my reputation is everything. It was delightful a year or so ago doing my website, because I asked ex-clients, and I asked journalists if they would write for me, and nobody turned me down. They wrote some, God, nearly had me in floods of tears, so find somebody with a good reputation, because they've actually got your reputation at stake. Once they are working for you and with you, they have your reputation at stake. So they need to have a jolly good one of themselves.
And you get to leverage off of their reputation, right? Because when you work with
Yep.
someone like you, you're not only getting everything that you're getting your 20 plus years of reputation,
Yes,
on top of
exactly.
all of that, and your leverage and all the
Exactly.
favors that you have. So,
Well, this is it. I've got a few in my back pocket. Exactly right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the know, like, and trust thing. It's get to know the person. Do you like them?
yeah.
Follow them on social media. We're all on social media. Is there a lovely freelancer or a PR agency that really get you? Do they specialize? They've all got their niche. So do they specialize in your sector?
All
It's
right.
all relationships. It goes back to relationships, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I guess, doing your homework as well.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Juliet. That's been such a great conversation. I learned a lot, and I know that our
Oh,
listener at
good.
home did as well. I'll put a link to all your contacts in the show notes as well, if anyone wants to get in touch.
Okay.
Is there anything I didn't ask that you wanted to mention?
You were quite ruthless. No, I think I'm all right. I don't think so. No.
Okay,
Happy.
very good. Then that'll be it. So thank you so much, Juliet.
Pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
You too. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please do leave us a review where you listen to your podcast and share it with your friends. New episodes every Monday.